Hi, and welcome back. Tonight, my guests and I were discussing debt. If you have any questions about debt or on how to deal with it, please give us a call at 613-728-1001. So I just want to start off here. So if you think no one cares about you, try missing a couple of payments. My joke of the week. So just debt, as Tom was talking about as we left for the break, the effects that debt has just not only on physical, but on your mental, your physical state, depressions, anxiety, lack of sleep. It's like debt is finance is a leading cause of divorce. And Troy, what other? I guess what I'm going to say is like what when someone comes to you and they're in that kind of state, what is it that you do for them?
Well, really what we do is, for us, it's really a three-step process. So step one is identifying, where is the family at? What's happening? What are the dynamics? And as part of that process and gathering the information, we need to come up with a plan. So step one, come up with a plan to deal with your debt. And generally it's from point A, which is they're in financial trouble, all the way through to point B, they've dealt with their debt, and they get to move on. We look at where they're at with their financial literacy levels. What do they understand in terms of what are some of the dynamics and how they got there? What do we need to do to support them? And then once they've dealt with that debt, then we need to go back to that credit rebuilding, because many people will go out and do different types of debt restructuring, but the credit rebuilding is what stabilizes the family, because without that, how do you go on to accumulate assets like home ownership, which is a gift for Canadians as an opportunity to build wealth.
And Tom, so someone comes to see you, what's the first step that they take with you?
Yeah, so it's really getting to the bottom of what the root cause is in the core problem. And I mean, we always try and let them know, first off, there's no judgment. We're not there to judge them what happened. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something we all go through. And really try and make sure that they know there will be solutions when we're done today. There will be options, and it's not as bad as it might seem. So, looking at what the problem is to make sure that we can get rid of it in the future is a big part of it. And then really letting them know how the session's going to go, putting them at ease, and making sure that they feel comfortable with us doing what they want us to do, which is achieve their goals.
Okay. And Steve Daigle, if someone comes to you and say they're having trouble meeting their mortgage payments, they have a lot of debt, is there something that you can do with them?
Well, usually the first thing is I'll get the story. What's the reason? Is it long-term? Is it short-term? And then if they have equity in their home, then what we can do is take the high interest debt that they have and put it into their mortgage. So, because everyone knows that you can get, like, your mortgage is the cheapest way to get money because it's secured to your home, so the interest rate's a lot lower. So often just doing that can take $500 to $1,000 off monthly payments. But then, like they're explaining too, it's important that it doesn't happen again. That's why it's important that they stick with the budget, because if you take $50,000 of high interest debt, refinance it in your house, and then 2 months later you're back to the same thing, what's the point, right? So that's really important, but that's a good way to save money every month and take some stress off.
Exactly. Do you find, Troy, that the majority of people you see are able to stick to a budget? Is that...
Yeah, budgeting is a tricky thing. What a lot of people will read, if you try to do a budget, 95% of people that try budgeting will fail. And the reason for that isn't that they're not good at learning how to track their expenses, is that there's other dynamics there. So one of the things that we touched on earlier was we like to get the family together. Get around this idea that money is really a problem for one person in the family. Get the kids involved. You can't start talking about money early enough when you have children, and get them as part of the solution and say, what do we want to do as a family? How do we want to move away from where we're at? How do we want to go on a vacation? Do we want to upgrade our car or buy a new house that has a bigger backyard? And you would be surprised at how quickly the kids pick up on that. Yeah,
I think that's a very good point, to involve the whole family.
Absolutely.
And not just the husband and wife, but the whole family. And I find that meeting with clients, a husband will have a credit card that the wife doesn't know about, and they're not on the same page of where they want to go and what they want to do, how they want to retire.
Absolutely.
And to open that dialogue, and especially involving the children, getting them involved. I know myself, most people don't know what our parents made when they worked. They didn't know how much the house cost or
Yep.
involved in that. So I mean, it's good to know these kind of things.
But I
And
think
it's a good
also,
start. So
also like it's not just doing a budget; it's a lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I meet clients, two different families, they make the same amount of money, they have the same debt, but one, you know, I maybe tell them, hey, maybe you should buy a cheaper house because clearly you have more expensive taste. You like going to the restaurant more often,
Right.
so it might be better to do that. And like he was saying, with the family, you want to decide what kind of lifestyle do you want to live. So maybe cut back on one area to make sure you don't get in trouble in the other one.
yeah, and I think when people think budget, they think of Gail Von Oxide. You know, where she comes in and she cuts your credit cards and debit cards, and you're living in an envelope, and you know, you're counting your pennies. When really, it's more just looking at what you're spending your money. I think that's the biggest thing, is looking at what you're spending your money on a day-to-day basis.
Well, that's it.
And then deciding, is this is what important for me or not. It's not saying, you know, you can't go out to have your $5 coffee. That's fine if it fits within your budget, right? And I think that is one of the big things, is people just don't want to do budgeting because they don't want to cut. They feel they're going to have to cut back on everything and eat, you know, brown bread, sandwiches, and drink water. Exactly. So,
but you're right. It's a plan, right? That's what a budget is. It's a plan for your finances, and everyone needs it. We need a plan for anything. Like buying anything good, there's a good plan. You know? And that's just the thing. I mean, when it looks at your budget, you really want to make sure you're in a position where you can manage everything. And sure, there can be some restrictions at points, but it doesn't mean you have to cut everything out and stare at a blank wall all day, right? It's just, it's got to work. And a lot of times when you think about the small sacrifices you have to make versus the feeling you had of being in financial trouble, you're going to come out ahead every time when you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll get a great feeling too when you save up your money to buy that goal. You've been working so hard and you knew you had to sacrifice to get it, right?
Exactly. It means a lot more, and it changes from, okay, do I want to spend $600 on a cell phone? You know, it's easier when you just put it on the credit card, right? You know, $600 cell phone doesn't matter. But if you were to actually set aside that money every month for a goal, you know, when you get that $600, it's like, well, you know, sacrifice all this. Do I really want a cell phone? This one works fine. You know, I want something else. You know, so I think it just kind of, all around kind of helps that, you know, earning what you have and changing what you want.
And starting to plan. So, you know, Christmas comes around every year. It has for the last, you know, 2,000 some odd years. Start planning now. And when you get there, you're going to have some money set aside. So you're no longer thinking, do I have to put on this credit card or that credit card? You can now start to plan out completely different than you ever have before. And instead of going into the holiday season where you're thinking, how am I going to pay for this in January? You can actually enjoy the holidays. And I think that is important not only for you know, the season, but it could be for anything that you're doing. Birthdays, buying a new car, whatever it may be. A little bit of planning goes a long way to reduce the stress in the family.
Yeah, and I think it's like we discussed earlier, where, you know, the interest rates, financing, everything is a lot easier to do, right, than putting that want aside for a year to save up, right? It's easier if you can finance it and be able to afford it. So I think it's made, you really changed the dynamic of thinking of determining what's a need and what's a want. But I think that's where budgeting kind of comes into place.
Absolutely.
And, discussing with the whole family, especially the children, getting them learning, because they're not going to learn it at school, so they got to learn it from somewhere. And, you know, if the parents don't know, then the children won't learn it. So, where can someone go to find out more, to learn more about finances if they want to?
Yeah, well, I mean, you go with our organization. One thing that we offer is free online financial webinars. So if you go to our website, we have a variety of topics. We have ones on raising financially fit kids, relationships and money, prepping for Christmas, money management. So there's a lot. We also have financial educators in Ottawa and around Canada, actually, and they hold workshops. So one we did last month, actually, was one for newlyweds. It's a free service, and got together, you know, told them, you know, there's going to be a change in your finances, right? There's a lot that goes on when you're entering into a
Then right after you had the one for divorce.
Exactly.
Just stay, guys. One more.
But that's it. I mean, there's a lot of exposure you can get by looking into their not-for-profit services and other professionals in the area. So take a look around online, and there's certainly a lot that's offered in the area.
And I know, Troy, we were talking about earlier too, before the show, about what you're involved with.
Financial literacy. Yeah, and you know, I think it's an excellent point. You know, when you look online, there's a lot of information. So the question is, why don't people go online and just read it and do it? Well, finances are more complex than that, and I think what you need to do is, if you want to create change in that family, is attend a class, or, you know, we do a lot of financial literacy. We actually set up entire programs that'll go from, you know, budgeting, income, expenditures, credit, and we monitor them as they do that. And some of the things that we found is that when they go through these programs, they have a 90% increase in their self-confidence. It's amazing. They have 50% more hope thinking about what's going to happen in their future because they now actually are starting to acquire skills. They're like, you know, tools in that toolkit that they can pull out. They can make the right choices. They now look at their life completely different. And it's very effective in creating change in people.
Yeah, I know the the FCAC, their website, they have a ton of tools on there, even geared toward younger teens.
Absolutely.
I think it's called In the City.
Yeah.
That's another great program too for younger people to get involved in finances. In terms of mortgages, understanding, I mean, I think, do you have any recommendations if people want to learn more about mortgages? And
well, like they all gave excellent ideas. I think people, if you just go on the internet, there's tons of information on there, but I think people often, they think it's going to be too complicated. They don't want to face the reality. But the information is out there. Like, I'm sure if you call them, they'll give you some information. You call me, I can sit down with you, show you the budget. There's tons of shows on TV. There's books. So the information is out there. You just have to get the information.
I think you bring up a good point about just calling someone and asking. I think a lot of times people are just kind of intimidated, because you're sitting across from someone who is in the, in terms of a mortgage or investments, someone that's, they know more than you, and you don't want to look dumb, you don't want to look like you don't know what you're talking about, so you're afraid to answer those questions. And I think that whole mentality needs to go away. I mean,
it's my job to
exactly.
know. So.
As a mortgage broker, I mean, you're there to educate the client and make sure they understand and they're doing what's right for them. And I think there's just a whole kind of myth about the whole mortgage financial industry. Even on your end too. I mean, I'm sure people feel intimidated. They're vulnerable, and they just don't want to ask those questions.
And offering the consultation in terms of where they're at, and if they don't need your service, you let them know. But I think as part of that is it's really about relationship building. So what people need to understand is if they do have debt issues, or they got mortgage questions, or they got financial planning, reach out to a few people in the industry. If they don't see an immediate sale right away and they decide they're not going to spend time with you, well, you really don't want to create a relationship with that person anyways, because if it's like this now, it's going to be like that later. But there are a lot of professionals out there that'll say, absolutely, and let me spend some time with you, let me educate you on what it means to get life insurance or financial planning or some debt questions answered or some mortgage, and that's the start of a relationship. That'll pay dividends to the individual as well as the professional. It's about creating relationships that you can trust.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, people have a choice, right? They're not obligated if they call somebody that they're stuck with that person. They can say, I don't like you, or I'm going to go to someone else that's going to treat me with respect.
Absolutely.
And they need to stand up for themselves and not just take the first person that they meet, and take control of the situation.
So, absolutely.
And I find no matter how different you think your situation is, like I have people call and they're like, oh, I don't think you've ever dealt with this before, and I think usually I have dealt with it, but I find it's fun because it's like a challenge for me. So if it's something I've never dealt with, then I will do research and figure it out, and I think it's enjoyable for most people when they do it. We're always in our industry trying to learn more and more.
Exactly.
So in these situations, it's actually helping us.
Yeah, perfect. So with that, we'll go for a break and come right back.